now we're going to set up the secondary, which has been a strong unit on this football team for quite some time, of course. And another fine performance last year, leading FBS football with 25 interceptions.
Unfortunately, you lose one of the higher, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Dane Belton. He led, I think he was, what, second or third in the country, tied for second or third in the country in total interceptions. I think we looked this up, Mark. He's going to be moving on. He, of course, primarily played at Cash last year. I think we talked about it because Sebastian Castro was listed as the #1 Cash guy heading into the spring. But safety, we talked about Kayvon Merriweather out apparently today for spring practice. So you hope he's okay. But, he's been here long enough to, I would think him being out is going to give some other guys an opportunity. Castro's one guy. Quinn Schulte's another guy who I think we're going to see a lot of this year. Where does Xavier Wampa fit into the mix? Could he end up being the Cash guy at some point? I wouldn't dismiss it. We've talked about Jack Kerner leaving. There's a hole to fill there at safety. But then they get Riley Moss back. You lose Matt Hankins, but you get Riley Moss back. TJ Hall comes in, a guy that I know Don Patterson was instrumental in recruiting. He is enrolled early, so he is there right now, which is great news. But having Riley Moss, and you got him as a Cash. You're projecting him as Cash. Is this from Daily Iowa?
I'm not projecting anything for anyone.
This is the Daily Iowa.
I will give credit. I typically, of course, any good journalist gives credit to their source, and I will do that at some point here soon.
I think you're probably looking at the track. And I've heard that people think that Moss is going to end up being the Cash guy. I do like their depth at corner because you've got Riley, you've got Terry Roberts, who's been a special teams star throughout his career. I'd love to see him grab a starting role on that defense. You have Jermari Harris, who got a lot of run last year due to injury. And then they have some younger guys. Brendan Diaz-Fernandez is a guy who's been on the roster here for a year, and he'll be back. Or maybe he might have actually been here 2 years. Cooper DeJean is a guy who, Mark, I projected him more, and I know Iowa at one time projected him more as a safety. He's right now listed as a backup corner. I know he filled that role late last year due to injury. I was surprised to see him as a corner. We'll see if he stays there. I think they're probably pretty comfortable. I would guess Phil Parker. First of all, you have confidence in Phil Parker and his ability to figure out where guys need to be on the back end. But they'll figure out a place for Cooper DeJean, who's a great athlete out of Iowa. AJ Lawson is still on the roster as well. Jackson Rexroth, he's there. I believe he was listed on the depth chart. Thomas Hartley. Now, Thomas, bring him up. He's a walk-on, Mark. I believe he's Jim's son. Now, I could be wrong on that, but some legendary status there. And then who am I missing? Kyler Fisher, who's played some special teams. Then they bring in several guys this year in the fall. TJ Hall, I believe. TJ Hall and Wampa are the only two defensive backs who enrolled early. You're going to get Cohen and Tringer. He'll be coming in as an athlete. Will he play safety? I think so. I don't necessarily see him as a corner, although, again, I'm not claiming to be an expert in projecting where guys are going to end up. I would guess he ends up playing safety. And then Alondo Traders, another guy who's probably more of a corner who comes in. They recruited very strongly at defensive back. I mean, between Hall, Wampa, Trader, and Tringer, that's 4 really quality recruits. They flipped 2 of them. I believe both of them were from Central Michigan. So they've got some good depth there, and we'll see. This spring will be intriguing to see if Wampa emerges as a starter. If the depth chart we get towards the end, I'm assuming they're going to release a depth chart at the end. Boy, you went way out of focus there, Mark. You look like you're in a time warp.
I don't know what to do there. Wow.
Wow. I've never seen that. That's never happened before.
Yes. Pay enough for this camera for it to do that.
You're starting
I don't know what happened.
I think your camera was starting to fall apart. But, lots of depth. I'm not concerned about defensive back. I said the same thing about defensive line, Mark. I'll probably say the same thing about linebacker to give everybody a preview of next week. But they've got lots of depth at both positions. And health is always a concern. You're always going to have, it seems like Iowa, and maybe this is the case everywhere, but it seems like Iowa always loses guys during the season. I mean, just always loses a couple corners, and you end up having to play the 3rd, 4th, sometimes the 5th guy. So Terry Roberts, Jermari Harris, regardless of who starts on that second spot, they got to be ready. Riley Moss missed time last year, and I think you're going to probably see a guy like Diaz Fernandez or TJ Hall. Hall being here early, as you know, Mark, is a huge advantage, getting that time in the spring as a true freshman. I think he could have an opportunity to play, and Phil Parker has shown he's willing to play the young guys, especially true freshmen. We saw it with DJ Johnson. We saw it with Desmond King. He's willing to play them early if they're ready.
So Jermari Harris, to me, based on what I looked at this afternoon, seems to be the guy that, I don't know, really could emerge. Started to last year, had a nice stretch drive. So he was pressed into action due to injury, correct?
Correct.
Had a really nice Citrus Bowl game against Kentucky, 4 tackles, 2 pass breakups, and a pick. Only gave up 18 yards to opposing wide receivers. And so there's one player there that you touched upon. So Hawk Central is where I pulled this depth chart projection from. They have Riley Moss at the cash, Jermari Harris, and Terry Roberts at the corner positions, then Kayvon Merriweather and Xavier Wampa at the safety spots.
Yeah, and that may be true. I remember Kirk Ferentz, after the depth chart release last week, he basically said that none of it matters. So, and that's pretty much, I mean, you're going to get these guys, everything's going to sort itself out. That's why you hope most of these guys can stay healthy. That way you can get a real feel. That's the problem with even if you have guys who are hurt and you have guys behind them get extra time, Mark, although that's a positive in one sense, it doesn't really help you sort out who should actually be starting. And so you don't really, I mean, I would think there's going to be a battle in the fall, but you'd have to think the coaches want some of this to shake itself out, especially with that depth. You want to see who's in line for starting snaps. I didn't mention Reggie Bracey. He's another guy who's a sophomore, and then, or excuse me, I believe he's a junior, although he may be a redshirt. Dallas Cradith. That's one of the very intriguing names on the roster, Mark, because he really emerged last year on special teams, helped them a lot. But like he was, I guess I could look up his recruiting status, but he was, I believe, a 4-star by some metrics, maybe a high 3. He had a good offer list coming out of high school, but if I'm not mistaken, he is a senior this year. Let me go up. I'm filtering through the roster here. Yeah, he's a senior out of Missouri. I'm surprised he hasn't entered the portal. And listen, that may be offensive to some people because, oh, well, they should stick it out. That's just not the day and age we live in college football, Mark. If guys aren't playing, they usually end up leaving. Now, I don't want him to leave. I'd love for him to stick it out and earn his education. Now, Iowa's had guys that have done that despite limited playing time. Devontae Young comes to mind. But Cradith has been really, I give him credit because he could have left and he stuck it out. Now, maybe he ends up leaving after spring. We'll just have to wait and see. But would like to see someone like that, like Dallas, be able to take a step and get some time, whether it be at cash or whether it be at safety. It hasn't worked yet. But I think the depth is really good. And when you bring in a freshman class, you don't necessarily expect him to start right away. But when you have 2 of those 4 guys who you were high on, one of which was a 5-star recruit, Wampa, and the other guy, which was, who's previously committed to Arizona, was committed to Washington, came here from Fresno, and TJ Hall, they both enrolled early. I think they're great on depth, and I think that freshman class will factor in at some point.